Barry King from BK on the Air and myself talk about educational TV growing up Generation X next on Retro Serial. Hey everyone, I'm Ian C. You're watching or listening to Retro Serial. On today's program, we have Barry King from BK on the Air joining us today to talk about educational TV growing up Generation X, whether or not you liked Sesame Street or Electric Company or Mr. Rogers or Schoolhouse Rock. If you are a Gen Xer, you grew up watching something like that. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy the program. And by the way, if you are not listening to BK on the Air, you need to. He has an incredible program that Gen Xers absolutely love. And if you love this program, you're going to love that program. The link is going to be in the description box below. But before we get to the interview, please do me the honor of liking this, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. Those three things right there mean the world to me. If you are listening to this on podcast, please leave me a rating and review. That helps a lot with the algorithms and getting it suggested to other people. And also, please share it on your favorite social media. If you want to know when these things are available and you're on YouTube, of course, you can hit the bell notification. And I believe this is going to be out in time that you'll be able to listen to it and join us for the Monday night live stream, because he agreed to be on the Monday night live stream, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So you can interact with the guest yourself, and we're going to be, of course, nothing is off topic as far as, whatever you want to ask him, but the relevant matter is going to be, we're going to be talking about educational TV that we all watched growing up Generation X. So please do all that stuff. Also, if you want to support us financially, you're welcome to visit our Patreon page, where you'll find two levels of support. First of all, there's the Cornflake Club, which is just $3 a month, which is just a thank you. We like what you're doing. Here's a gift. Keep it up. But if you want to be on the Insiders Club, you have to do the $5 a month with the Honeycomb Hideout. But with that, you get all videos, and most all podcasts at least one day in advance, at least advanced enough that you say, I heard it before anybody else did. And if you want to give a one-time donation, you're welcome to do that also at Venmo. I'm at Singularity_Productions. That will also be in the description box. So check us out. If you're on the podcast or on YouTube, you're a YouTube listener or watcher or a podcast listener, please check everything out. Hey, and with all that said, let's get straight to the interview. Hey everyone, welcome to the show, Retro Serial. I am so excited. Look, I'm not going to reintroduce the introduction, because if you've been watching this from the beginning, you've already seen the introduction. But as you know, I've got Barry King here from BK on the Air. How you doing, Barry?
Great, doing great. Good to be here tonight. Finally getting to talk. Not in person, but face to face virtually, which is always fun to do now.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I wish if I could wave a magic wand, you'd be across the desk from me and we'd be doing this kind of Joe Rogan style. Aside from that, doing this is just great. So thanks for being on the program. I'm a huge fan of your show, quite honestly. I mean, it is an hour and a half of just pure, once you cut it down with the commercials out of it, and I listen to it on the podcast, on the replay. It's an hour and a half of pure Gen X entertainment.
Well, thanks a lot. You guys, I'm just now jumping into the Retro Serial show that you guys do, because believe it or not, being so busy and as busy as we are, I don't get to listen to a lot of stuff, so I have to pick and choose when I have listening time to listen to other shows and stuff. And I've thrown you guys into the mix, and I'm enjoying your show, your content, your YouTube channel, and the whole thing about Retro Serial is great. We're all of a like mind, and I love that stuff. But I appreciate all the kind words. You are too kind.
Well, thank you very, very much. I just had a couple personal questions for you before we get started. Not like too personal, but just more about like your
none that the statute of limitations was having to do with, right?
I hope not.
All right, good.
I hope not. But I kind of want to get your story. Like, when did you start BK on the air? What got you interested in saying, "Hey, let's do retro kind of material"? What was the evolution of that?
Well, I guess I can go back to 1983. I guess when I got my first job at a radio station in a local town that I grew up in and was born in, called Center, Alabama, a little AM station there. That's actually where it started. It started there, but it ended there because I was hired just to do specific things like play recordings of obituaries. It was an AM station in the middle of Alabama, so it was very rural, country music, gospel music, and they wanted just a certain thing on their station, which is understandable. They had their own thing they wanted to do. But I was in school and I just started working there, and I'd always wanted to work on radio anyway. Even as a kid, I would record my siblings and family members on a Panasonic cassette tape, and interview them and stuff like that. So I always wanted to do it. But I tried to sneak in things at this little station in between telling the time and the temperature at the top of the hour, and the old carts where we had to switch out the tape carts and stuff in 83. And I was a junior in high school, and every now and then I'd slip the mic on. And I'd go, "Hey, by the way, before we get to the gospel hour coming up, did you catch the Incredible Hulk last night? Man, it was a great episode, along with the Dukes of Hazzard and blah 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 blah." Well, that just didn't really fit in there, and these guys, the manager, the owner of the station, he didn't really appreciate that. So, but that was kind of where it all started, way back in the early 80s, and worked a few places since then, but really took off a few years ago, back in 2012, at a station in Cartersville, Georgia, called WYXC, and it was a late night show. I was on from 9 till midnight on Saturdays, and did my own nostalgic geekiness talk the way I kind of do it now. And that station unfortunately had management problems and went dark and went out of business.
Too many radio stations that happens to.
Yeah. This was due to manager problems and poor management. But that station went dark. But luckily, the same town that I was on the air there has another station in town called WBHF. And this station that I'm at now, they've been on the air since 1946, constantly. They're one of the oldest AM stations in America.
Wow.
And they added an FM signal later on, and they said, "Hey, how would you like to work in the daytime instead of nighttime?" I'm like, "Oh, 10 a.m. till noon on Saturday. That gives me a social life back with my wife. I can start doing stuff again instead of working at night on Saturday nights."
Right.
But it all just, that's just a quick Reader's Digest version of what happened to me. And now that's led me up to today, still at WBHF. And they give me basically the keys to that radio station every Saturday. And I do pretty much anything I want within FCC rules and regulations and whatnot. I don't want to break them anyway.
Right.
I get to do that. And a few years, 2 or 3 years ago, I decided, this podcast thing is getting popular. Why don't I just take the radio show every Saturday and condense it down, take all the regular commercials out, and add retro commercials and sound effects and bits from Sesame Street and Schoolhouse Rock and all the stuff that we remembered as kids, add it back into there and mix it together and make it a little more goofy, and turn it into a podcast. And the rest is, I guess, history, I guess. Now it brings us today. I'm talking to you guys at Retro Serial. It's great. I'm making a lot of new friends, just like with you guys and everybody else. It's great making these virtual connections via social media and podcasting. It's great.
Yeah, it's a different world. We don't really have to compete with each other like we did back in radio. In radio, it's just like if you're on at a time, or TV, if you're on at a time, you're competing for a slice of the pie. Somebody is not listening to somebody else to listen to you, and vice versa. And with the whole, really, with the only limitation is time. That's it. You don't have to really compete. Even if you miss a live show, people can be equally a BK on the air fan and equally a Dave Sundstrom fan, and listen to both.
You are so right when it comes to that, because everyone that I've ever encountered so far, with just very small exceptions in the podcast community, always wants to elevate everyone else and go, oh, hey, if you come on the show, I'll make sure and share it on my social media and tell everyone about it. Oh, and hey, I will too. It's the biggest pat each other on the back, help each other community, non-compete thing, at least with the people that I know, in the world, this podcast community, it's all great to see that. It's breath of fresh air.
Yeah, we can all like make it. You know what I mean? We can all make it. And there's enough audience out there for everyone to make it. And what's interesting is people like listening to what they and watching what they like listening to and watching. I mean, you can literally go like, well, I could literally put out a video called, what would happen if Darth Vader didn't tell Luke Skywalker he was his father, and you get 100, and the next person can put out the same video, make the same points, and people will watch it because if you're interested in it, you're interested in it.
Right. And you know exactly what you're going to get. If you hear what this podcast is about, you're not going to listen to it and go, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't about soccer. That was about Star Wars. Well, that's what they said it was about. So you already got a locked in audience that's already probably going to like what you're talking about anyway, if they're fans of that kind of stuff. And just throwing out those scenarios are great to speculate about, because that's what geeks and fanboys and people that like us, that like that sort of stuff, we like doing that kind of stuff. And to have an outlet like this, I mean, there wasn't anything like this when I first started in radio. It was just radio. And the signal that I had when I worked at my first AM station, I think the signal probably stopped at the parking lot, beyond the parking lot of the radio station. Nobody could hear the station because it was so small,
Yeah, it
but
was.
Now my station broadcasts on a stream and on the TuneIn app and on the Radio Garden app. So if you've got a signal in Antarctica or on the moon, you can hear me on the radio. I think it's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let me ask you this question, just as a technician here, about how long does it take you to turn your radio show into a podcast? Because that's got to be some work.
Well, it depends on what's going on here at the house. Because if I sit down and go, okay, I'm going to edit this together here, I've got 2 hours worth of stuff that I need to go through and pull out this, replace it with that, and add this and fix that and edit out that stupid thing that I said and that I don't do all of it that way, but I do make it sound a little bit better and do some sound corrections. I can, if I sit down, I can do it in just a couple of hours. But sometimes the doorbell will ring, something will happen over here. I've got to go to the store. I got to do this, but I usually get it. I'm running behind now, but I can usually get it done by late Monday to get that Saturday episode up by Monday. And I'm not even on any of the podcasters that I have to pay for. All my podcatchers that I use are free. So I'm not ready to invest anything in mine. I've been doing it for the podcast now over a year and a half now, and been constantly in the top 10 on Podcast Magazine's top 50 hot 50 list. So
that's awesome.
It's just pushing it and just doing the best I can. And you know as well as I do, if you've got a passion for something and you feel passionate about it, talk whatever the subject is, I think it'll come through. And I don't think you can be fake about something, because people will find out you are. They will detect that. Right.
I have another technical question for you. Because I haven't been in a radio station in years, like since the late 90s. And I actually had a radio program very briefly for about 6 months in the late 90s. It was a religious program. But back then, like, you had to record it yourself, and you had to record it on a tape, basically. And I'm wondering what it's like now. Is it automatic record? If you've seen it since 82 to today, the technology in the radio station has got to have changed considerably.
Well, think of how much computers have changed since the mid 80s till today.
Yeah.
So that everything, and it has been at the radio station for a while, and different stations with different levels of, that make more money, that have better equipment, are a lot different than some of the smaller ones. But it's completely with us automated now. I mean, everything that we've got, there's no more tapes you put into play. It's all off of a computer program that runs while we're on the air, which automatically fires, our news at the top of the hour, and at the bottom of the hour, the local news. The commercials fire automatically during my show. The only thing I got to remember to do is just to turn that microphone on and start talking when I'm watching it and it's ready to go, and that's when I do it. It is all automated now, and even the as far as recording things, the great programs we have to edit and fix things with now. I happen to use Audacity, like millions of people use.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't even know a lot about it. I know enough about it to do what I need to do to edit my show and put it out there. I know there's more things in there. There's a billion menus in there to choose things to do things with. And I learned them by just getting there and doing them and using them. Oh, what does this do? What does that do? Oh, okay, I don't want to use that. But that's how I do, is I kind of just jump into stuff and do that. And hey, I've got a technical whiz with me, Alan Sanders, that's on there with me every Saturday. And Alan's a big computer guy, and he knows all of that stuff, and he's really great at it. And plus, he's a great broadcaster too in his own right. He has his own show, and does the morning news every weekday morning there for our news department. So I've got people I can ask questions of, but it has changed a lot since then. Even with radio, it really has.
Yeah.
And plus the streaming, you couldn't get out anywhere. Local people heard your station back in the old days, but now anybody can hear you anywhere. It's
everybody's got a chance at this point. You don't have to be discovered.
I get emails from Washington State. I've gotten an email from Germany before. I've gotten an email from Canada, from Costa Rica. Not a lot, but I have gotten emails from those locations, and it kind of makes me go, wow, somebody from Costa Rica is listening to me talk. Wow, this makes me feel kind of cool. So it's humbling, but it's fun.
It is. And for me, this has been a learning experience. When I decided to do retro serial, it was from scratch. I literally knew nothing about video editing. Nothing.
Which is a great title for a show, by the way. Great name. I love that name. Wish I'd have thought of that one.
Well, it started out as cereal for dinner, and because that's what I grew up eating. Cereal for dinner as a Gen Xer, right? And but somebody had that, and then so I decided to change it to Some Cereal for Dinner. I thought, well, does that change it enough? And I didn't want to hire a lawyer to find out if that was a big enough change. So I just changed it to Retro Serial. So, and I didn't. I tried to look it up myself. Like, what's the deal with titles of shows? And can somebody come back and sue me? So I just decided to.
I feel your pain. I kind of got it in the back of my mind. I'm thinking, when is Burger King going to call me one day?
Oh yeah,
cease and desist, or haven't done it yet. And I don't think that's. I think Burger King is probably trademark, but not BK.
BK.
I'm okay. I've been okay so far. By the way, I love the Rebel helmet in the background.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
You should do at least one episode one night with it on. That'd be awesome. Be hard with the headphones though.
It would be hard with the headphones because it couldn't hear it. Maybe I could get different headphones and put it under there. Great. I thought of it. The biggest problem, and I've tried to wear it for a sustained period. The only problem is that yellow visor that comes down really actually does a number on your eyes. It gives me a headache rather quickly.
Oh wow, yeah.
So I just
imagine.
I might get used to it after a while, but I've never tried to get used to it. So, but I have thought about that though. Actually, I thought this would be kind of fun. But the headphones.
You're like, hey, are we near the end of the program? And you can sit there and go, almost there, almost there, almost there.
And get blown up.
No, not blown. Hey, and in honor of you, I'm actually drinking out of my glass tonight. If you can see my Batman.
Yes,
that's Batman. That's the 1976 Batman glass from Burger King that I still have. So.
That's real. I bet that's worth a pretty penny.
Good stuff. Yeah, I just hold on to it. I don't know why.
I got some stuff that I've held on to too, and some stuff that I've lost, and I wish I had held on to. But I do a little. One of the things that I do is a Gen X show and tell, where if I go pick up something new from the store, like I got I don't know if you can see it, an Obi-Wan Kenobi back there. Yeah. I pick that up and we'll talk about it. I did one on lightsabers too, so I got a few lightsabers. So, yeah, but I do wish that I would have held on to some of those things, and not been so foolish with them. When did you realize though that doing retro stuff would I mean, you don't just do retro stuff. I know that you do current things as well, but
Right.
I mean, I know that a large part of your program is dedicated to, hey, this happened in 1962 or 1972, or a large part of your program is dedicated to that, not just current pop culture. But when did you realize that that was going to be a thing, like not just pop culture but retro pop culture?
Well, one thing, I guess we have to wait long enough for it to become retro. That's for
Right.
sure. And more things are becoming retro now, where I'm thinking, wow, was that really 20 years ago? Holy cow! Because I'm in my mid 50s now, and years go by like this now, like a snap of a finger.
Right. Yeah.
But the reason I wanted to do a show like that is I'd noticed that on radio, and I'd listened to radio for years, FM, rock, music, and then I'd listen to talk shows here and there. But I was always thinking a few years ago, back in the 2012, 2011, I was thinking, I always wanted to do this, but there are so many radio talk shows on that cover, there's politics. I mean, there's a billion politics shows. Then you have computer help. We have a lot of shows where they call in if you have computer help. Then you have financial help talk shows. Then you have, name the subject. There's probably a car repair. There's a national car repair show, even local ones on certain stations. And I started thinking to myself, I don't really know of any retro nostalgic talk show that talks about kind of what I want to talk about. And if there was, I didn't know about it. There may have been, but I didn't hear every station in the whole country. But I just started doing it because it's what I wanted to do, because I can't talk about anything else but that. I'm not a sports guy. I mean, all my buddies that are sports guys are like, hey, did you notice the so-and-so beat the so-and-so team? And I'm like, guys, all I'm thinking about right now is I'm really looking forward to seeing Doctor Strange. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. But it's good that you guys like that. It's all right. I like this, and they understand. So, but I just wanted to do it as a talk show on the radio and be on the radio. And I'm very privileged and thankful that I can actually be on a broadcast radio station and do it, and not just a podcast. Nothing wrong with podcasts. I'm not knocking them or anything, but there's something that just makes me feel like, wow, I'm on the radio. There's not a lot of people are doing podcasts.
Well, it's iconic
radio,
too. I mean, it is iconic.
Yeah.
You grow up and you watch, WKRP in Cincinnati
Right.
with Johnny Fever and Venus, and I mean, you go, hey, that looks like the coolest job in the world. And I used to do the same thing. I used to pretend I was on the radio. I'd put a tape in and I'd say, all right, the next, hey, everybody out there in Radio Land, and do my poor DJ impersonation and say, now next up is going to be Iron Maiden. Then I'd do tape to tape recording of Iron Maiden or something, and try to sound as cool as I could. And then I don't know for who, I wasn't selling them.
Right.
It's just,
that's great though. Yeah.
It was just for me. But I mean, the quality of your show is actually, you can tell that the quality of your show is radio quality. I mean, you got the bells and the whistles and stuff like that. There are some podcasts that do have that as well. But it's like a next level kind of thing. I mean, radio, you can really hear that there's a slickness to the presentation, and everything kind of comes in right on time. There's no waiting, where with my show it's like watching kind of a stitch together kind of train. I'm doing the best I can to edit it down. There's nothing professional about what I do, but the radio, I can really tell that it's well formulated.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Behind the scenes, there is a lot of drama in live radio, because we only got one chance to get it right, because we're live for 2 hours, and some things happen. Sometimes that Fox News channel won't fire off at the top of the hour, and we got in radio, you can't just sit there and go, what do I do? You have to do something, play something, or say something. You got to say something. But learning that, I attended a place called the Birmingham Performance Academy.
Cool.
Right out of high school in Birmingham, Alabama, and it was just a place that taught me how to use my voice, some acting, some improv, just some things that might carry into doing something like that. And I learned a lot from a lot of older folks that worked there, that worked in radio and in theater and were actors, or not popular actors, but they had been doing it for a long time. And I went there and just got some technical training there, and just went on from there. And it was really fun. I used to have a little AM radio. I'm sure you used to have one. I had an AM transistor radio that was small, and it took batteries. And I loved to walk up. We lived in Northeast Alabama growing up near Lookout Mountain. And at my grandparents, I could walk up on the top of the mountain where they lived. And I would turn that radio on and I could tune in these stations, and I had my flashlight because there's no light on the dial and it was nighttime, that which where you could really hear stuff. And I could tune in these stations and I'd take a notebook while I was up there all by myself on this big rock and write down, oh, that's so-and W something out of New York. Oh, and I'm hearing a guy now talking out of Washington State. And I just document where I was hearing all these folks talk from these different stations. And I thought it was fascinating and I loved that. And I still have that AM transistor radio today.
Oh,
and
wow.
The first time I went on the air on an AM station, there was kind of a delay or whatever. And I'm like, okay, we're going to a commercial. So I run out and turn, I want to hear myself on this AM radio station that I used to listen to people on, and got to hear a little bit of me because of the delay on this AM radio station. It was stupid, but it was important to me that I did that. And I just had to do that the first time I could hear myself on an AM radio.
That's totally understandable. I mean, I would want to do that myself. It's crazy that it had that much of a delay that you had the ability to run out and grab
hearing
it.
myself, I misspoke. Here in the show, I run out and would listen to it in the parking lot right after I got off going to a commercial, and I could hear like the station ID and stuff, and know that it was the station I was on. It was really a big kick, and it was kick. I loved it.
Right on. Well, let's get into our subject today. I kind of wanted to talk about, I try to find a subject about growing up Gen X, and I think one of the biggest subjects out there is educational TV. I have to ask you, so I think there's a lot of educational TV, a lot of, hey, we're looking out for kids. We want kids to grow up right. TV's kind of our parent in a way. But the big three for me was Mr. Rogers, The Electric Company, and Sesame Street. Those are the big three for me. And then we'll talk about Schoolhouse Rock and different things like that. But for you, out of Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, and Electric Company, which of those three were your favorite?
Well, you kind of graduated from one to the other. When I was a kid, you kind of when you were little, you started out with Mr. Rogers, and then you got a little older and you're like, oh, I'm getting into Sesame Street now. I'm getting into more like counting and then reading things and stuff. And the Muppets were always great. Right. And then from there, you kind of graduated onto the Electric Company, which is a lot more hip, and what a great cast they had. I mean, you had Morgan Freeman there when you didn't even know he was going to go off to be so big. Right. And then Rita Moreno from West Side Story. She's another legendary lady on there. And then you kind of went into Zoom after that. If you remember Zoom, the TV show Zoom, we're going to zoom. Do you remember Zoom?
I don't.
Okay. That may have been, it was out of Boston, Massachusetts through a PBS station up there, and it was syndicated around the US. So that was even a little older for an older crowd. And there was another one called The Big Blue Marble. That was maybe I saw some that you didn't see, but I thought different tiers of ages, you would go to different shows at the older that you got. But out of every one of those shows, you asked me the question, out of every one of those, my favorite was always The Electric Company. I don't know what it was about that show, whether it was Spider-Man or just being so funny, and they had little skits. It was almost like a kid's version of Carol Burnett show, where they had little skits. They'd act out things to teach you words and phrases and sounds and numbers, and putting things together and putting words together. But yeah, the Electric Company, which were just watching a few weeks ago, my wife and I were watching some YouTubes on married the computer with the big screen TV, and was watching YouTubes videos of it. And it's great. I just forgot how funny and great and tricky the Electric Company was, because the best thing that these shows did, which I'm sure you'll agree with me, especially Schoolhouse Rock, is they would trick us as kids into learning things. Right. We didn't want to be taught, we didn't like it. I didn't like math. I didn't like English. I didn't like science as a kid. But when you tricked me into learning something, I can do the preamble to the Constitution now, because I can sing it, because I know it. So that's where they really shined. So the Electric Company was my favorite one.
I agree.
Definitely.
Definitely agree with you. And I like the way you put it. You know, how you kind of graduate. You start off with Mr. Rogers, then you go to Sesame Street, then you go to the Electric Company. I really think that's a great insight on the progression. I certainly kind of went that way. There was always a fondness in my heart for Mr. Rogers, though, even older. You know, I'll go back and watch those, and there's seriously a little bit more of a nostalgia for me with Mr. Rogers and the other two, but I have to say overall, I'd have to give it to the Electric Company myself. I mean, again, it's like they did trick you into learning. I mean, you're like watching a skit comedy show, and and they're throwing words at you that you don't know. They do the and then the other part of the word,
Right.
remember?
Right. The little silhouette faces will go back and forth, which I play on the show, by the way. Sometimes it's a great segment. And the phrase is TION, shun. That song, shun, 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 TIO, and it would just it's in my head now. It'll always be there.
It's really good. And then
but Fred Rogers was an amazing guy, and you're right about the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood. He was the man with me as a kid. I mean, he was amazing. He was great.
He was pushing boundaries, you know, early on, and just being friendly with everybody. And I just think that was really awesome. I think that the big lessons that you learned in Mr. Rogers are kind of different than the kind of lessons you learned in in Sesame Street and Electric Company. Mr. Rogers, you're learning to be a nice person, and you're learning the like how to handle disappointment. I don't know if you remember this episode in Mr. Rogers, but he thought he was going to come in and make a rainbow. And so he had some water and a flashlight, and he thought, well, if I sprayed water and then I have a flashlight, that I'd be able to make a rainbow. And I think he did it either on a white wall, or on his fridge or something like that. And it didn't work out for him. And instead of, I don't know, being upset, he took the opportunity to talk to kids about being able to handle your emotions and how to handle it when things don't work out for you, And so I think that was a very important thing for Mr. Rogers. And I think leaping from Mr. Rogers to Electric Company was more about in that tricky way, learning the facts, learning about how to spell, learning how to read, learning how to do math, learning how to do, those kind of things. And I think the in between there is the Sesame Street. Sesame Street's a little both.
They kind of give you that bridge from Mr. Rogers to the Electric Company, because they had the Muppets that were goofy and they would sing and let you act like Goofy for a while. And you had Bert and Ernie. Hey, are you more like Bert or more like Ernie? We were all like one or the other, more than the other. Or Cookie Monster, where you want to just have a bunch of cookies. That would be great. But you're right about Mr. Rogers. The one episode that stands out for me, and that was a great one that you mentioned about that, because wow, couldn't we use a little bit more of that today to teach kids about disappointment? They need to learn about it a little bit more nowadays than we did. I mean, we learned it when we were younger, but they need to learn it today too, and some of them don't learn that. But he had Margaret Hamilton on one of his episodes once. That was the lady that played the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz, the original Wizard of Oz. It was Margaret Hamilton, and he had her and had the costume with her and was kind of explaining to the kids, now she's not really her. She plays this character on The Wizard of Oz. She's an actress, and she was talking to her about the role and stuff. And as a kid, I saw that and I'm like, okay, yeah, she's not, because when you're a kid, you can't tell the difference between someone as a character and an actor, or they're a real person. But that was really the first time I remember seeing someone who played a character that I knew in a well-known movie that we all loved as a kid, and still, The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West. And she was really a lady sitting there talking to me. She was in coffee commercials too, that I saw later on in the 70s too. But I'm like, oh, she just really is a lady acting like a witch. She's not really a witch. So that was another good episode of Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't want to leave Sesame Street out of the game altogether, because I think Sesame Street certainly played a part.
Genius show, yes.
Yeah, and I loved Sesame Street a lot. But there's one episode of Sesame Street that I remember, not episode, but a skit, I guess, or a segment that I still remember this day. Speaking of Bert and Ernie, where Bert had a plate of cookies. and Ernie ate one of the cookies. And he comes along and he says, I can't remember, it was like 3 or 4 cookies, but just for the sake of the illustration, there was like 4 cookies and Bert ate one of them, or Ernie ate one of them. And so Ernie says, you ate one of my cookies. He says, no. And he goes, well, I had 4 cookies here. And he tried to rearrange them. He tried to well, maybe if I turn them this way, he goes, now. He's like, no, that's still only 3 cookies. And he keeps trying to rearrange them. It's like, that's still only 3 cookies.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times I've used that as an analogy for other things, especially like over the pulpit or something like that. I try to use that as you can't get more into something than you get out of it. If it's
right. No matter how much you change it. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Right. So were you more like Bert or Ernie?
Well, I think I was both. I think a lot of us had a little bit of Bert and Ernie in us, because Bert was the staunch. And I always heard that Jim Henson and Frank Oz was like Bert, and Jim Henson was Ernie. I mean, in their personality. So I thought it was great that they played those puppet characters like kind of they were in real life, but they talked about. But I could be kind of staunch and nerdy and kind of a prude, I guess, like Bert is a little bit. But then I could be a goofball like 32 and goof off too. So I had a little of both, I guess. I was more of Ernie, but maybe I'm more Bert that I get older. I don't know. Maybe I've changed getting older.
That might be certainly the case. Become a little bit more like Ernie.
Right.
No. Yeah. Like, you didn't understand that as a kid. Get off your lawn. Like,
right.
Why?
I didn't have a rubber ducky though. I had a rubber tugboat, little boat for the bathtub. So good old Ernie there. Speaking of Bert and Ernie, do you remember the episode or the segment where Bert did the dance called "Doing the Pigeon"? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. I don't.
It's on YouTube. If you get a chance, look up Bert sings "Doing the Pigeon" on Sesame Street, and it's the first time I ever see Bert. He's walking on a sidewalk, and they had a full puppet of Bert moving his legs, his arms, and his head, and he's dancing against a black backdrop and doing the dance called the pigeon that they invented it as a kid. I'm like, he's walking. Look, he's Mom. Bert's a real guy. He's not really just a puppet. He's actually walking. I don't know if they ever did it again, but he was actually, his whole body, you could see his whole body moving, and it was great.
All right. What Sesame Street character did you like the most, do you think?
Oh, it has to be Grover.
Grover.
I don't know why I identified with Grover so much, because he was just, to me, plus Frank Oz's voice. I mean, Grover to me is the closest thing to Yoda's voice. I think if you listen to Grover and Yoda, I'm like, hey, that's close. But Grover to me was the goofball monster that always wanted to be funny. Sometimes he'd be Super Grover, like Superman. He'd come, his little skits he'd do when he was the waiter coming to wait on the guy in the restaurant with the little blue Muppet head guy, and just doing things. I don't know what it was, but I had a really soft spot for Grover. Grover was great.
The fly in your soup, the one. As he comes and eats the fly. Yeah. What about what did you think of Oscar the Grouch?
Oscar was great. As a kid, I always got mad because I'm like, why is he always a grouch? I think it taught us as kids, don't be grouchy. But then if you watch Oscar, and if you watch the show closely, you found out that Oscar really wasn't a grouch. He was, but by the end of the skit or the end of the episode, he showed that he had a heart. Kind of. He really did, which is proof that I guess all of us do. But that always reminded me of how, remember how Winchester would act on MASH. David Ogden Stiers playing Winchester on MASH, how he was so hard-hearted and this Harvard Boston guy, this big stuck-up guy. And what's funny is in the show, if you watched MASH, you found out that he had a heart too.
Yeah,
I mean, it was there. It would show itself, and you'd be surprised.
It's just somebody who gets frustrated easily. You know what I mean? Doesn't like antics a whole lot. It's not that they're uncaring. It's just that they don't like antics.
And how talented were the people on Sesame Street? We talked about the guys of the Muppets, the writers, the producers. Carol Spinney, who played both Oscar and Big Bird, was a really legendary performer. I already talked about Jim Henson and Frank Oz, but everyone that was connected on that show came together for a reason. And you talk about educational shows. I'm real good friends with I'm sure you remember the television series Shazam that came on CBS. Yeah. Well, Michael Gray that plays Billy Batson is a good friend of mine, and we talked to him a lot on my show, and And we were talking about when we had him on last time, we were talking about how a lot of those Filmation produced television series in the 70s on Saturday, you'd watch the credits at the end and you'd notice PhD names at the end, people with PhDs and doctors. Well, they consulted them because they wanted to include things in the program to help teach kids right from wrong and what to do and things. And they'd always put that tagline at the end of the episode. They saved the good guys. Everything's okay. And at the end, Shazam lands and go, "Hi there. Today's episode was about playing with matches. Don't play with matches." I mean, he's looking right at the camera talking to the kids. And I listened as a kid, I couldn't believe it that he's talking to me. So I'd have to lump some of those shows into educational programs too. Because again, it was a fictional television series about a superhero that was giving us a message and teaching us stuff, and did it in a sneaky way that's really sunk in, and it was great. And sure. Michael knows he loved being in Shazam. Loved that show.
Yeah, those were I always loved those little lessons at the end. They did that on G.I. Joe. They did that. Well, G.I. Joe just not only did little lessons like that, but they also did like helpful hints too.
Right.
Kind of like, I remember one on G.I. Joe when it was like when somebody had something stuck in their eye, and it was something I actually used, because he said, "Oh no, don't rub your eye." He goes, "Pull your eyelid over your bottom eye and it'll water up and you'll cry out the sand or whatever, it'll tear up and and so I remember those. The other one that did that was I think the Mr. T cartoons. I don't know if you ever watched.
Yes.
If you were I'm sure I think you've mentioned what year you were born before on your program, but you're more like first generation Gen X kind of thing, first wave Gen X.
Right. I was born in 1966. Now, when Mr. T had come on, I still was watching some Saturday morning cartoons, but that was when I was already phasing out, because I graduated in 1984. So that's when I started being I can't watch cartoons anymore.
Right,
I'm a teenager now. I got to move on. But when my friends weren't looking, I'd be like, "Oh, that's a cool cartoon. I like that." I was still doing it a little bit. So yeah.
I watched cartoons longer than I should have too, partly because I'm an early riser.
Nothing wrong with that.
And so even when my friends were sleeping in, I just wasn't a sleep inner. I would be up, and so there's really not a lot to do but watch cartoons. So I stayed watching cartoons probably longer than I wanted to admit at the time. I don't care now, but at the time,
even as a kid, once American Bandstand hit, I was out the door on my bike. So I'm like, cartoons are over, time to leave. But unless it was somebody that I liked in the early 80s, I'd watch American Bandstand, because some of the rock groups I would like would appear on there. But as a kid, I'm like, nope, time to go play now.
Right. Yeah, that was it. That's out the door at that point. Yep. So yeah, I mean, the Mr. T did that. I just wondered if you were kind of over it by then, the Mr. T phase. But he used to talk about bullying and staying away from drugs was a big one as well. And let me get back to Sesame Street, because there's one more thing that irked me about Sesame Street, and that was the whole Snuffleupagus thing that nobody.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that bugged me so much that nobody ever believed Big Bird that he had his friend Snuffleupagus. And I'd be yelling at the TV too. My 4 to 7 year old self, he was just there. Oh my, how can you not believe? Why didn't you just make him stick around so long?
even as kids, it frustrated us. Yes, it did. I hated that.
That was great. Yeah. So
later they fixed that, because they didn't want the kids to start thinking there was an imaginary friends too much, and thought it was maybe, I don't know, it's a different era now. And so they made it where everyone could see Mr. Snuffleupagus after a while. And I'm like, you just kind of destroyed the whole magic of it. But how long could the joke go on for? I don't know. But they did make him where you could see him eventually. So, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was kind of sad, I thought.
So finally, everybody knows. Well,
I think so. Yeah, I think I read that. Yeah.
I think Tickled Me Elmo was later too, wasn't it? I think
I don't
remember Elmo anyway.
No, I think you and I had long past moved on from Sesame Street when Elmo came in. Yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't cool like the other monsters. The other monsters are kind of had the low voices and they were tough and stuff. But Elmo, I don't know, maybe he was acting like a different type of kid that was out there too, that had, a little more nicer, a little more sensitive, I guess. I don't know. But it wasn't one of my favorite monster puppets. Maybe he was someone's favorite monster muppet. Sure, somebody.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, you remember the Tickle Me Elmo scare that happened.
Right. Oh, popular too. Yeah.
That was the Cabbage Patch Kid of that era.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Right on. Well, let's explore the PSAs and stuff like that a little bit more, because part of the educational television that I wanted to talk about was kind of the after school specials. Do you remember well, I'll just leave it open. I mean, is there any after school special that kind of pops into your mind?
Those are things that haven't, if they have been released since then on home video, DVD, or Blu-ray, I haven't seen them anywhere, but I haven't made a real big effort to look for them. But I can only remember images and just certain scenes from some of those back in the day. I do know that they were on a lot. And again, those were on after school. So I was usually playing and stuff. I wasn't watching those, but I'd catch them later. Sometimes they repackaged them and play them as little short films or something. And I remember one that was called We Live in a Hotel or something. It's called We Live in a Motel or something. I don't know if you remember that one. But
yeah, it's My Dad Lives in a Hotel.
Right. I do remember kind of that one because I come from a divorced family. And I was watching it and I kind of went, oh, wow. And why am I watching this, being reminded of what's going on? But I found that one to be powerful. But I just remember certain scenes and certain images from some of those in the 70s. Oh, yeah.
What about, do you remember Stoned? With Scott
Baio? Yeah. I think I do remember that. Yeah, but I think I saw it again later. I didn't see it when it first came on. So
okay.
The after school specials were ones that I, like I say, those are you bring Stoned up. I wouldn't even have thought about it unless you brought it up.
Yeah.
That's the only two flashes that I have.
Those were ones that you didn't, they were trying to get you away from drugs.
Right.
That one. And I remember one about these two girls who were swimmers who got coked out. I don't know if you remember that one or not. Yeah. They were swimmers. They swam and then they didn't get their career because they were coke, because they had too much. They got addicted to cocaine, basically.
That's pretty heavy. That's heavy stuff.
Yeah. I don't know.
I remember after school specials. I'm sure CBS and NBC had their own versions, but after school specials were primarily ABC. Those. It was the ABC network that did those. I do know that.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one that came on, but I remember that then they started blowing all their money. The other one I remember was the shoplifting one. Do you remember that one? Oh,
wow. No, I don't remember that one. But okay. I bet it was powerful as a kid, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, not powerful enough to deter me, but I mean, it didn't deter me from drugs either. So, I mean, I have anyway, I have a long story and a longer story. I won't get to them here.
Right.
But no, they had these two girls were also shoplifting, not the same girls, but it was another show and had two girls and they were shoplifting and finally got caught and the parents were sitting there, like, well, what should we do? And this can't be that serious. We'll just pay the price for the pair of jeans or whatever. And the thing is things move so quickly in an hour.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like scene one is should we shoplift, should we not? And enters some other girl. Oh, I'll show you how. Okay. And then you got the scene where you have the montage of them stealing.
Right.
And then you have them getting caught at the end. That's kind of how they all worked. It's the same with the drug use. The drug use is at the very beginning. Well, shouldn't I? I'm not sure. Oh, well, I've got a bad friend who's going to introduce me to weed. And then you have the montage of the acting stupid and losing everything, and then you have the resolve at the end. So I think that's kind of the 3-step process in all of these things.
Are you saying that the after school specials had a formula that they went by every time?
I think so.
They did.
Hey, one, and I don't know if you remember this one, but one that blew me away as a kid. Like, I didn't understand it. Like, I didn't understand it because I was just a kid, but it was one with Meredith Baxter Burney. And and it was about bulimia, and she was secretly suffering with bulimia.
Oh,
And
wow. No, I don't remember that one.
yeah, but she was a grown woman who had a kid in the show. And in the show, what happened is at the very beginning, she's like all into running and being fit and stuff like this. And she drops her kids off at her parents' house or something. And she says, now make sure they don't eat sugar, be real healthy or whatever. And then she goes into the store and steals a bunch of, she didn't even pay for it. She steals a bunch of food. She opens up like cookies and starts shoving them in her mouth. And like, as a kid, I'm like, what? I mean, what's going on? Like, I can understand.
She was bulimic and a shoplifter too, or
I guess
wow.
she was.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't understand the scene. I guess she didn't want to be caught buying them, because that was kind of, I don't know, it would look bad, because she was health conscious. She was, really into, her character was really into health. And then she went and threw everything up. So,
wow.
Yeah, but as a kid, that just shocked me. First of all, it shocked me on a couple levels. I was a kid and I really thought adults didn't do anything wrong. I really thought that for a while. I thought, no, adults don't lie, only children lie.
Right.
And adults don't do bad things, only children. And I think that was maybe one of the first times that I realized that adults do things wrong. Right. And the other thing I didn't understand as a kid was, why doesn't she just buy that stuff? You know what I mean? Right. Why does she have to steal it? If she wants to go hork out on cookies and throw them up later, that's one issue. But why is she stealing it? And I'm like, you were
using kid logic. I mean, that's right.
It's like she had this, anyway. Well,
think about it. Kids like us at that age, we probably had never even heard the word bulimia or didn't even know what it was.
Right.
And that helped us learn and taught us kind of what it was. It was different kinds of educational programs, maybe not teaching us reading and writing and numbers and all of that, but it was teaching us just life things, which was what those after school specials kind of did.
Yeah, they had a serious tone to them. They had the after school specials were more serious lessons, about.
And I remember the title sequence. It would come on. I do remember that, because usually when it would come on, I'd go, oh, that's coming on. Look, and now it's come on. Now I can leave, because I didn't watch all of them. There's a little gumball machine.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that. And they had the ABC after school special would appear inside the gumball machine, and the little gumballs would come out. That's what I do remember about the title sequence for that. Yeah.
What about the PSAs? Do you remember any PSAs, public service announcements? Do you remember any
I remember
with the star? The only reason I kind of remember it is because of Family Guy.
Right. Well, there was those, then they had the one called the More You Know.
Yeah, the more you know. Yeah,
NBC did that with the little star coming by, and they would. Betty White would be on one. I think Mr. T did one about kids trying to lift weights, and he said, "Listen, if you're not trained in to do this, fool, don't be lifting weights. You could hurt yourself and stuff." Then they had Jason Bateman on one, and but I remember the biggest, most popular PSA I remember in the '70s, which always really made me want to cry and scared me at the same time, was the pollution one with the Native American guy.
Oh yeah,
that was the real most powerful one that I think they played for years, and they may still play it somewhere. I don't know, but that was a powerful little PSA about polluting.
Yeah, and I really thought too. I mean, I didn't. I thought all the world's problems was based on pollution as a result of that.
I never wanted to throw anything out of the car, and never did. I mean, I just didn't want to do that.
I didn't either. I think that just has something to do with manners too. I don't know exactly what was going on, but apparently this was a big problem, and public television had to get our PSA had to get involved. ABC or whoever it was that ran it had to get involved.
Then you had Hootie Owl, give a hoot, don't pollute. We had those, which I remember those well. They used those for a McGruff, the crime dog, take a bite out of crime, who's coming back, by the way. There's new McGruff spots being worked on.
Is there?
And they're going to start up McGruff, the crime dog, again very soon. We talked about that on the radio a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I always liked McGruff. I always liked the McGruff house. Remember the McGruff house that you could run into? That in case there's a stranger or something like that. He wants you
to keep an eye on things. He's like, the Joneses next door are gone, and they're gone, but why are those guys loading stuff up out of their house? Well, you should call 911 because they're not home. So And he taught you how to do it,
Yeah.
which was good.
Yeah, he taught you how to. It's a community thing. Taking care of
Right.
everybody is a community
Yeah.
thing. The other one too. Well, let me just. Well, there's two things coming to my mind. One was later, and I don't know if you were a Motley Crue fan or not, but I do you remember the PSA with Vince Neil talking about not doing drugs? And I don't know
I don't know.
what.
Did he? I might. Yeah. I don't remember him doing one.
Well, he got in. Well, he got in that accident where he was convicted of manslaughter, where he was drinking and all drugged out, and he drove, and the drummer for Hanoi Rocks was in the car and got killed.
Oh
And
wow. I forgot about that.
and yeah, and so he only did 6 months in jail, but he had to pay all kinds of fines, and he had to do public service announcements, and he had to get
Right.
clean and stuff too. And yeah, there was one where he's riding his motorcycle down the coast, like the 101 or something like that, and he pulls over to the side, and he's like, he says something like, I used to party and I can still have fun. Now I do it clean, and I'm just encouraging you to do it clean too. So I don't know if you remember
Hey,
that one or not, or if you were
wow.
ever a
I
Motley
didn't.
Crue fan or
I
not.
never saw that one. Yeah, there's one you got on me. Yeah.
Were you a Motley Crue fan or no?
I never got into the metal music. I mean, I think this. I would joke with people that the hardest rock I ever got into was AC/DC. I guess was as hard rock as I ever got. But as far as metal and some of that the big hair band stuff in the '80s, I was more into the pop and the regular rock and roll in the '80s. But I never leaned towards, nothing wrong with it. I never got into the hair band
That's
metal
cool.
stuff.
I was interested. I'm actually wanting to do a one of these on pop one of these days anyway. So I mean, I was into all of it, but I was really into heavy metal when I was a kid. When I was like up to 14, 15, 16, I mean, that was my jam, right?
I had my friends that would go see they'd go see Motley Crue and go see a lot of the metal bands, and I would be over going to see Hall and Oates in concert or some Men at Work or something like that. But it's
a
fine music.
Fan too. I mean, great.
Music is just as personal as people's food tastes. I mean, you got such a variety and different things to get into. But yeah.
Well, we can't let this hour slip by us without talking about the about the Smokey the Bear. I mean, that was a big thing there. I mean, I think we all remembered only you can prevent forest fires.
And still is to this day. He's still around doing it. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, today his voice is done by Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott.
Oh, really?
I think. I may need to check myself on that because I like to think that I'm not wrong a lot, but I am. So, but I think, Sam Elliott's doing his voice now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That's cool. That makes sense. I mean, when I hear Smokey the Bear, I can totally hear Sam Elliott. I don't know if he always did it or not, but
sounds like him anyway.
Yeah. I mean, Sam Elliott. I mean, who else would do that voice?
Only you can prevent forest fires.
Yeah, that was a good Sam Elliott right there, my friend.
I remember one Mad Magazine parody. They'd have little posters on their magazine in the back sometime that would parody something that was going on at the time. And the popular tagline for that was, "Only you can prevent forest fires," as you said. Now, they did a parody in Mad Magazine showing a giant bear coming out of the woods with his teeth and his claws coming at you, and there's a fire behind him, and he's about to kill you. And it goes, "Don't remember, only fires can prevent bears." It's like, that was terrible, but it was funny, though. But it was the Smokey Bear parody, and I thought that was great. That was hilarious.
Yeah, it is hilarious.
We're kidding. That's not true. We're just joking.
Right on. And I remember the Stephen Wright joke, too, where he said, "Only you can prevent forest fires," and he was just like, "Me?" And so every night I was up on the roof with
being diligent.
I thought it was up to me alone.
Right. He's talking right to me.
Right. The other ones I wanted to cover was the Schoolhouse Rock. Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That for me, that's the pinnacle, because I actually still really enjoy Schoolhouse Rock. And when VHS was there was a time where you couldn't get just whatever you wanted on VHS, but then there was a time where like Rhino came out and then you could order it, and we ordered Schoolhouse Rock, and there was like science rock, math rock, grammar rock,
because knowledge is power. That's right.
Yeah. And there, in each one of them had like 5 or 7 of them, and I think they're actually still doing them. Actually, are they? Yeah.
I don't know. I think they did them up to a point. I don't know if they're still doing them to this day, but they did do some newer ones. Yes,
yeah,
they did, I think. Yeah.
Well, what was your favorite ones?
Well, see, I knew you was going to ask me that. I have a Barry Tingle. I knew you were going to do that. That Spider Sense went off.
Your Spider Sense.
There's so many of them. I always wondered which one was my favorite one, and I had one as a kid that I always loved to sing, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's I love I'm Just a Bill, that's a great one. But for some reason, when Junction would come on, What's Your Function, that was the one that always stuck with me, and I always loved singing as a kid. So if I had to pick a favorite one, that would be it, for just no other reason than that.
Junction. Yeah, I like that one too. I think that was a good one for everybody. It's really funky. It had a real funky beat to it.
And how cool was it when I found out that the guy that sings I'm Just a Bill, and he sings, he's the male singer in putting in words and phrases, clauses. That sound of his voice when he sings. That was Jack Sheldon, and he was a jazz singer and trumpet player, and an actor. I'd seen him on episodes of Dragnet and Adam 12. He worked for Merv Griffin for a long time, and later on, when I saw, as a kid, I didn't know that, but later on, I'm like, that's Jack Sheldon singing those Schoolhouse Rocks, and I had no idea that was him. And he was great. He had his voice coming out singing those Schoolhouse Rocks. He wasn't how you imagine when you saw him. You're like, he looks like that. Well, I didn't know that. I expected a big 300-pound guy with singing with like big head and lots of pipes and everything. But it was fun finding out who that was singing.
I was surprised who that was. There was a television, not a television. There was it was a movie with Greg Kinnear in it. Is that his name? Greg Kinnear?
Yeah, he was a host of Talk Soup for a long time.
Yes. Yeah. And he did a movie where he worked at the post office.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that one.
I think it was something about kids writing to Santa or something like that.
Right.
Or I can't remember, but a guy comes up to him and he talks to him, and I'm like, that voice, that's the guy. And he says,
it was Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I discovered later he was a jazz guy. I liked Lolly Lolly Lolly. Get your adverbs here.
Another great one. Yeah, they're I mean, I don't think they made a bad one.
No.
they did some that weren't as quite as popular, but they were great.
And what were some of the other one? The Junction.
I've got my wife chiming in from the other room saying 3 is a magic number. Is my favorite one. I'm like, yeah, that is a great one. She loves that one. Yeah.
That is a good one. 3 is a magic number, and then they taught you to count by threes in that one. 3, 6,
That's
9.
Right. 12, and I remembered 14, that too, along with the preamble to the Constitution.
Yeah, the America one, the elbow room.
Yeah,
elbow room. They had to move out west with Manifest Destiny.
Right, and the no more kings and all that stuff. Yeah, that's just great stuff. Tricking us into learning again. That's what they were doing.
Right on. Totally is. Good. Well, Barry, this hour has just kind of flown by here.
What? Wait a minute. What time is it? Oh, wow.
That's true. But before we go, so listen, while we're here, can I book you for the Monday night event so that my audience can interact with you and talk about educational TV?
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
That would be great. Just send me an email like you did before and remind me what's going on. Yeah.
This Monday we'll do, God willing, creek don't rise and things like that, and everything stays. I got one situation in my life that's a little tentative that everything could fall through at any moment. So
same here.
Yeah. But other than that, Monday it's at it would be 8:30 your time, if that's okay with you. Sure. But tell people about, if they don't know, which I'm going to assume that everybody who listens to me already has listened to you, but in case somebody's a fan of mine and doesn't know who you are, that rarity, tell everybody where they can reach you, a little bit about your program.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you having me on. I've had a great time. I always have fun talking about this stuff. It's me, BK on the Air. That's the name of the show. I'm on every Saturday, live 10 a.m. till noon Eastern. And I'm on WBHF radio locally. It's 100.3 FM and AM 1450. They can stream the station at WBHFradio.org and stream it online there from our website, or you can download the free TuneIn app or Radio Garden app on your smartphone or portable device or whatever you're using, and listen to it that way. 10 a.m. to noon Eastern, BK on the Air. I tell people I was born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s, and graduated in the early 80s. That's my generation. It's just nostalgic geekiness that I love to talk about, and the new stuff. I'm just north of Atlanta in a suburb, and we've got so many movies that film in Atlanta, including a lot of the Marvel stuff, which is great that we have local connections with, and it's great knowing that they're doing that stuff. So we talk about the new stuff coming out that we love and that everyone else loves, and then I take it and turn it into a podcast. And you can search for BK on the Air podcast. You can find it. I'm out there on. I got a YouTube channel like you guys have.
Find all that right on YouTube too.
Yeah, YouTube. I got it on YouTube. You can hear me on Spotify, Anchor, Podomatic, and SoundCloud. So I'm out there. Just got to do a BK on the Air podcast search. You'll find me. Got anything particular coming up? What's some of the focus of your shows that are coming up next? Well, I don't know what's coming up this Saturday, but it's going to be, I have the usual nostalgic geekiness. We'll have the latest movie news that's going on, maybe some of the sequels that are being worked on. We've got Obi-Wan Kenobi just around the corner on Disney Plus that's coming up. We're really looking forward to that. And this weekend, at the time of this interview that we're doing, they're releasing Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the 4K director's cut in the theater. Fathom Events is releasing that, and we're going to go see that this weekend. And I'll review it the weekend after this weekend after we see it. They've completely remixed the entire first Star Trek movie from the ground up, sound, the picture, and everything into 4K director's edition, and it's back in the theaters. And we're going to go see that too. That's awesome. That's a lot of stuff. Awesome. Weird stories. It's all coming up on BK on the Air every Saturday. Cool. Well, thank you for joining me. Don't go anywhere quite yet. Hey, everyone, you know what to do. Go to his YouTube page or however you listen and subscribe. And the link will be in the description below. If you like what we're doing here at Retro Serial, please, I encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and share it on your favorite social media. Those things are free for you to do, and they mean the world to me here as I am trying to grow the channel. So I appreciate that, and I thank you very much. If you are interested in supporting us at all, you can support us on Patreon, and we have 2 levels of support. There is the Cornflake Club, which is just $3 a month. It's just kind of a tip jar saying, hey, we like what you're doing over there. Please keep it up. But if you want to be part of the Insiders Club, you have to join the Honeycomb Hideout. And Honeycomb Hideout's $5 a month, and you get most all videos and podcasts at least a day in advance, at least advanced enough that you can say you're on the Insiders Club and you heard it before anybody else heard it. So how great is that? If you want to give a one-time donation, you can catch me on Venmo at Singularity_production. So I want to thank you. I want to thank my guest. Thank you, BK, for being here. Really, really appreciate it. And join us on the Monday night live stream. Stay safe, everyone, and stay retro.